Hello, this is my very first time making a YouTube video, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again. I don't know if I'm doing it right, so please be patient. I am making this video because I'm experiencing a lot of exhaustion as a Black parent in the suburbs trying to navigate the public school system. We are in a predominantly white neighborhood and have been for many years, and it has been exhausting to say the least. Um, that feeling that parents get when the school year is getting ready to start, they're going to get a break, you know, good times, the children are going back to school. I rarely have that feeling. Very rarely, because I know there are certain things that my children that are going to encounter that are going to be less than pleasant, and that's school in general, but they're going to have to navigate different landscape being, quote unquote, the minority in the situation. When I try to share sometimes my concerns about, hey, my children are having these challenges in school, as soon as I say, oh, they're in XYZ school, oh, that's a good school, that's a decent school, you should be happy to be out there, in the suburbs, as if, there's this panacea that as long as you're in the suburbs, your children are guaranteed this wonderful educational experience. And that is just not the case. I believe every child deserves a quality, equitable learning experience that's going to prepare them to go out into the world and be equipped to determine what their own success means and strive for that. However, sometimes I believe that Black children, be it in urban areas or suburban areas, will always have a different battle to deal with in the educational system. And sometimes just sending my children out the door to school, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by them. I have sat in many meetings with many educators and administrators trying to convey that while I expect my children to follow the rules, while I expect my children to produce and do their work, there's also certain cultural considerations that need to be taken into consideration. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm exhausted. I had a meeting with my daughter's school this morning. She's in junior high. I met with two of her instructors and the dean at the school, and it felt so fruitless. It was about my daughter's quote unquote behavior. And I had expressed in an email before I came to the meeting that, wow, I definitely want to address her behavior and her response to things, and she needs to maintain a certain standard. I also had questions about my daughter's experience under one of the educators, because my child had this educator in elementary as well. So fast forward to the meeting today, it felt like the narrative was set before I even stepped in the room that we just need to get on one page and we're gonna correct this child. We're going to hold this child accountable, with little to no concern about the underlying causes of why my daughter does not feel safe emotionally and socially in that environment. And when my daughter began to cry and she was saying why she does not feel safe with this instructor, the dean, a white male, immediately cut it off. Like, this may not be the best environment. We need to have this conversation at a different time. And when the teacher tried to respond to my daughter, she had the floor. The dean was like, let her speak uninterrupted. when I went on to respond to the instructor saying, no, these are the experiences that I had in elementary with you, and I understand why my daughter feels the way she does. Again, the dean cut it off. So my daughter went to class asking me, could I change her class on the way out? And I knew I could not give her an immediate answer. And I told her we would talk later. I stayed behind and I spoke to the dean. And when I shared my concerns with him about the culture of the school, any efforts that the school was trying to put in place, that the student body and the teaching staff would be more reflective of one another. That is to say, there would be, is the school looking at the research about the power of male teachers and the power of having leaders who look like you in the school system? And every time I open my mouth to ask questions about learning disparities, about those efforts that I had asked about to make this teaching staff more reflective of the student body that they serve, he was, I know what you mean. I know. I taught, in Boston. I taught, in the Chatham area. And at one point he said, well, I don't know completely what you're saying, or, I won't live that experience. It was very much that I'm aware of these things. But everything's not going to change in a day. And I don't believe it will. I was in predominantly white educational institutions. I grew up in the suburbs. A lot of the things that I faced when I was in school 20 years ago, my children are facing those same things. In the year of our Lord 2019, there's not been much change or much difference. And it's disheartening. And so to wrap up that story about the meeting, my daughter does not feel heard. I don't feel heard. I believe, you try to share your concerns and you try to say, hey, my child does need to follow these rules, but my child is a whole person as well. And my child has a right to her voice and her personhood. It's just swept under the rug. And to be talked down to be cut off and just treated with a level of disrespect, if not disdain, is frustrating, because I'm there to advocate for my child. Not to say that she can get away with everything, not to say that, she's not responsible for her behavior. She is. Let's look at the environment as well. I feel like the one time that the dean was really on, he felt like we were on the same page, was when he felt I was being hard on my daughter. When he felt like I was saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. Oh, he loved that. A lot of administrators love when they feel like you're coming down on your child and you're using this punitive corrective behavior. They love that. That's, I've seen that in so many cases, black mama whooping her black child. Oh, they love that. That's right. Get your child in line with this system, because if you don't, we have some other punitive measures that we'd be more than happy to, incorporate. And while young people may not have the skills to share, or the language, but the language to convey how they feel, that being ostracized, how they feel that sense of isolation, how it has been proven time and time again that if a black child, a brown child does the same behavior as their white counterpart, that the black and brown children are going to face greater repercussions as far as discipline, and more harsh repercussions as far as discipline go. These young people know it, you feel it, and you carry yourself in a certain way when you know that somebody's watching you, that people are more punitive with you. And I I felt belittled and talked down to by this administrator. But I also know that I probably have little recourse because I've been doing this a while. My daughter has 2 older brothers. We've been through this district. If you go and talk to the principal, to the dean, if you go teacher, dean, principal, you keep going up, please know that all of these people have their back. They are looking out for themselves and their institution. As much as a lot of people may believe they're there for the children, and some educators are really there for the children, and they really are committed to the children's well-being. There's a lot of unchecked biases. There's a lot of stereotypes that are just floating around in people's heads that they're not addressing on a day-to-day basis. And those things come out in the way that they discipline children and the expectations that they have for children. And the children suffer. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Sometimes I wish I had the means to put my children in private schools. My children did do a time in a private school, and although it was also a predominantly white institution, my children had way better outcomes academically and socially at the end of the year. However, it wasn't financially tenable to continue. I wish there were Afrocentric schools in my area that I could send my children to, where they would see people who look like them leading and just being, the powerful people that they are. But that's not what I have at my disposal. Homeschool, if I didn't have, the dual responsibilities of being, primarily responsible for all their, material goods, maybe homeschooling would be an option, and maybe it wouldn't, because I believe teaching young children is a skill, and some people are much better at it than others. I just wonder if there are any other Black and brown parents who are really just navigating the public school systems in the suburbs, particularly in the suburbs, very well. Because I feel like I'm not. And maybe it's just me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just my family. I don't know. But if anybody has an idea of how this can be done better, I would be more than willing to hear. I mean, put it in the comments. I think that's what you say. You like respond in the comments or whatever. I know this video is very long and I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want people to understand there's no panacea for anyone, but running to the suburbs, what people think. And I didn't run, I came up in the suburbs. This has always been where I've lived. This is what I know. I have very little patience for super busy, tight areas. I like space. I like to be out and stretch my legs. So I like the suburbs. I like the country. But so I know I'm not, I said that to say that I wasn't running from the city. I've never lived there. So I'm just wondering how children we assume have it so much better can actually have an equitable chance at learning, or the best that they possibly can get, in systems that are not made for them. And if parents have limited options, there are also very few charter school options in the suburbs, particularly where I live. At one point, I lived in another state, and there were a lot of charter school options. But where I am now, that's not the case. So this has gone way, way long. So sorry. 15 minutes, I think. So I just want to know, is there any advice someone could give me? Any resources? Thanks, and be blessed.